Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, again, thank you for giving me the floor to contribute to today's meeting. I join to thank the Special Envoy of the Secretary General to the Great Lakes region for his briefing. Mr. President, Rwanda commends the Special Envoy's dedication to peace, development, and security in our sub-region. Mr. President, Rwanda welcomes again the report of the Secretary General and appreciates the consideration of the fact that security and humanitarian situation in the sub-region is not contributed and limited to one armed group. Similarly, Mr. President, we echo his call on all warring parties to cease hostilities and take advantage of several existing agreements and peace and security roadmaps that have been designed for peaceful resolution of the conflict. Rwanda reiterates its readiness to execute commitments in the Peace and Security Framework Agreement in good faith. Mr. President, Rwanda knows firsthand what it takes to build a nation from ashes. We know that focus should be given to national reforms, the integration of former combatants, neutralizing armed groups, and the establishment of a state authority. This is why we are committed to carrying out all tasks required of us by the Peace and Security Framework to ensure that the region is moving forward to peace and stability throughout our borders. Mr. President, addressing the root causes of conflict remains a crucial factor. This brings my intervention to the dangerous attitude that classifies specific communities in the Eastern DRC as foreigners, and thus should go back to where they came from. Such an attitude is a seed to unending conflict. It promotes hate, marginalization, and violence. This dangerous rhetoric undermines United Nations and the sub-regional efforts to lasting solution. Mr. President, there is another area of extreme importance, which is unfortunately has not seen progress, namely the neutralization of the 1994 Genocide Force, FDLR. This is one of the oldest armed groups in DRC, which settled in DRC after committing the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. Mr. President, despite several UN Security Council resolutions, PRSTs, press statements calling for its disarmament, disbandment, FDR continues to recruit and train combatants and have committed grave human rights violations, including promoting and committing ethnically based and other killings in DRC and in Rwanda. Therefore, Mr. President, entertaining a genocidal force further complicates and promotes and prolongs conflict for which the region has already paid a heavy price. Even more disturbing, Mr. President, is that such an attitude of entertaining FDLR might set the stage for further conflict in the region. Mr. President, if DRC government chooses to defeat armed groups militarily, we are very okay with that. Our problem remains that choosing siding with FDLR. This kind of relationship will always attract Rwanda's close attention and alertness. Mr. President, Rwanda firmly believes that international community should engage with the signatories in genuine collaborative terms. They should build on regional initiatives to achieve sustainable peace by addressing the root causes of conflict. Chief among these causes is the more than 2-decade active presence of DRC, active presence of FDLR in DRC. The harmonization and synchronization of international and regional efforts are paramount to avoid diluting or reversing progress achieved under the Peace and Cooperation Framework. For example, the implementation of concrete resolutions agreed upon this year was unfortunately diverted by unrelated agendas, some of which only serve to worsen existing problems. This international community, through its special envoys or other channels, should make greater use of the good offices of the Special Envoy of the Great Lakes region to ensure that signatories to the framework continue to work in the spirit of confidence, building, ownership, and accountability. Mr. President, I have several questions to ask. After our collective resolve of the abused word never again, the Security Council is still struggling to find a lasting solution to FDLR, whose leaders and members are among the perpetrators of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. Instead of addressing the leading causes of insecurity in Eastern DRC, we continue to prefer to manage this insecurity and focus on the consequences of FDLR presence in Eastern DRC. Why can't the Security Council follow up on the implementing multiple resolutions it has adopted and hold accountable whoever collaborates with the FDLR? Why that long silence and tolerance of hate speech and xenophobia? These questions, Mr. President, are legitimate not only from a Rwandan or a regional perspective, but also from a broader perspective of maintaining international peace and security. In this regard, Mr. President, it would be unfortunate if the Council would spend another 28 years dealing with FDLR and its consequences for DRC and the region. Indeed, Mr. President, beyond the absolute need to restore peace and security in the region, this collective inaction also further undermines the implementation of the peace and security framework for our region. Despite challenges, Mr. President, let me conclude on an optimistic note. Rwanda is convinced that the overall momentum for peace, security, and cooperation in the Great Lakes region is so strong that it would eventually enable getting to the bottom of the causes of conflict under the supervision of this Council to live up to our collective expectations of a secure, stable Great Lakes region free of armed groups, including the remaining genocide force on our continent. I thank you, Mr. President.